Yakuza Like a Dragon is the latest installment in Sega's long-running beat-em-up slash open-world action RPG series. Or should I say turn-based, as compared to previous Yakuza games, Like a Dragon is not alike in action. Alright, I promise I won't make any more stupid rhymes in this video, but anyway. The developer behind the Yakuza series, Ryuga Gotoku Studio, which is a division of Sega, decided to take the combat in this newest installment in a wildly new direction and pull some pages out of Dragon Quest books. Gone are the days of the more beat-em-up inspired gameplay with light RPG elements, as Like a Dragon has now turned into a full-blown traditional turn-based JRPG, just one that's set in a modern-day Japanese setting. Combat aside though, the exploration is still the same as ever, along with a dramatic tone of the main story mixed with the more lighthearted, wacky nature of the sub-stories. This tonal shift might seem like it would be jarring, but the Yakuza series has always done a great job in weaving them in and out together seamlessly and making it feel natural. This surprisingly balanced yin-yang approach to tone, combined with loads of minigames and side content the games have, has basically been what the series has best been known for. Longtime fans will be happy to know that all these components are still intact, and despite the change in battle system, Like a Dragon still feels like a Yakuza game through and through. Now with all that said, how does this newest installment compare to the previous Yakuza games? Well, let's find out in this quick review over Yakuza Like a Dragon. Like a Dragon places you in the role of the hot-tempered, lovable bastard, Ichiban Kasuga. When the game begins, he's merely a lowly ranked Yakuza out of the Arakawa family in the Tojo clan. After some important events transpire, the patriarch of the family asks Kasuga to take the fall for another Yakuza member and serve a lengthy prison sentence for a murder he didn't commit. Kasuga feels a great sense of loyalty to the patriarch for taking him in when he was younger, so with no hesitation or second thought, he gladly accepts this monumental request. Nearly 2 decades later, Kasuga finally gets released from prison, proceeds to get absolutely wrecked by his barber, and then comes to find out that things are very different and that his former Yakuza family refuses to acknowledge him. Now, this may sound like I'm spoiling a lot of the game, but this all happens within the first hour and is basically just exposition to set up the main plot. The game truly begins after all this, as you're a homeless nobody just trying to survive and make your way back up in the world. I won't go into too much more detail on the story as to not spoil anything, but it is a really good one with very strong writing, and in my opinion, is one of the better stories in the entire Yakuza series. Speaking of the Yakuza series, out of all the many games in this long-running series, Like a Dragon is the first one not to feature Kazuma Kiryu as a protagonist. I know for myself and other big fans of the Yakuza games, this had us a little worried. Not to say I thought Kiryu should have forever been the main character of the series, as his arc did come to an end, but just given how awesome he was, I know he was going to be a hard act to follow up. Well, I'm happy to say that Ichiban Kasuga follows him up extremely well and is a fantastic new protagonist. While Kiryu was cool, calm, and collected, in comparison, Kasuga is much more rash and hot-headed. This is just due to him being a really emotional and passionate person though. I don't mean hot-headed in a mean, aggressive type of way. He's the type of person that would go to any lengths to have his friends' backs, whether it's fighting for them right there on the spot, or even serving some jail time for them, as his story clearly shows. He's also super optimistic too, no matter how shitty the situation is, and all in all, just seems like a great-ass dude to have around. Perhaps the thing I like most about him, however, is that he's a huge fan of video games, particularly Dragon Quest, and often compares them to real life, which is something I find myself doing a lot as well. I've always thought life is like an RPG, regarding how you have to grind for money and train to level up and get stronger, whether that's physically or mentally. So yeah, it was really awesome to finally see this recognized and referenced so heavily in a game. Kasuga really thinks his life is a game of Dragon Quest, and considers himself to be the main hero of the story, which always compels him to have good morals and do the right thing. With that said, he does take his RPG metaphors a little more extreme than me though, as when he's fighting people in real life, he starts to hallucinate them as more standard video game type enemies. It's actually a really clever way of getting more typical JRPG mechanics in this modern setting, as most games of the genre usually take place in a more fantasy, sci-fi type world, and when it does take place in a modern setting, there's often a supernatural element of sorts to make cause for a hostile presence, like Persona for example. Anyway, the other characters and party members poke fun at him for this and tell him he plays too much video games, but yeah, something like this happened in real life, it would definitely be more of a serious intervention and time to put the controller down. On that note, as the CERN party members just gave away, in addition to Kasuga, there's 3 other characters you can control in battle. Like most RPGs, they all have their own unique stats and abilities. What's different compared to most other RPGs though, is that the characters all have specific status effect resistances based on their real life profession and experiences. For example, Adachi is a former cop, so he's less susceptible to fear and sleep, given that he dealt with fear a lot as a cop and didn't get a lot of sleep, I'm sure. Nanba, being homeless for a while now, has more resistance to poison considering his immune system has been strengthened after being exposed to all types of stuff on the streets. And Sayako is less swayed by charm, given she's been dealing with cheesy pickup lines from dudes her entire life, and her bartending experience helps her handle her alcohol better than most, which, yes, is a thing in this game. All in all, I just thought it was really unique and clever how they tied in some JRPG mechanics while still making it make sense within the context of the story. Now with that said, not every RPG mechanic ties in so naturally, but that's okay because it is a video game after all. As long as it's implemented well and made fun, I could really care less. The class system is one of these examples. A little ways into the game, you unlock the ability to change your job, which basically serves as the class system in Like a Dragon, reminiscent of old school Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy titles. Only instead of turning into classes like black mages and thieves, you can turn into a vast array of more modern occupations like a chef, a breakdancer, or even a J-pop idol. There are many more than this as well, but these are just a few examples. Now, does it really make sense for Kasuga to be a bar host one day and then a foreman the next? I mean, not really, but it's still a cool way of implementing a job system in a more modern setting. But anyway, when you choose a job, there are 3 different outfit variants to choose from, though this only is visible in battle, as when you're walking around, you just wear your normal clothes. Your teammates just need to level up in order to gain access to new jobs, but for Kasuga, in addition to this, one of his 6 personality traits needs to be of a certain level as well. In addition to your typical battle stats like attack and defense, there are 6 personality stats as well that are exclusive to Kasuga. Not only do these allow you to gain access to new jobs and open up new conversation side quests throughout the game, but they also provide resistance against certain status effects. Style defends against charm, intellect defends against brainwash, confidence defends against sleep, passion defends against silence, kindness defends against rage, and charisma defends against fear. I really love this modern take on status effects and how it makes sense for those personality traits to resist against those effects I mentioned. I know I keep saying stuff like this, but it just goes to reiterate how well and clever I think Like a Dragon handles all these RPG mechanics. There's a variety of ways to level up personality stats throughout the game, but a lot of it comes through selecting certain dialogue choices and conversations, and taking exams at the vocational school. Speaking of the vocational school, that's just one of the many side content you can do in Like a Dragon. In addition to all the more standard sub-stories the game has to offer, you can also take some swings at the batting cages, watch some old cinema classics, sing some karaoke with your friends, competes in a Mario Kart inspired kart racer that has loads of content and is pretty much a game on its own, lead a confectionery company into becoming one of the most profitable businesses in Japan, and I could keep going. I'm going to be here all day if I list them all. There truly is a staggering amount of side content in Like a Dragon though. To longtime fans, this will come as no surprise as it's a staple of the series by now. For newcomers coming in for the first time, however, I can imagine they're going to be pretty blown away by everything this game has to offer.
Pretty good.
Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned how Like a Dragon has a completely turn-based battle system, but I haven't really discussed it in too much detail yet, so let's take some time to do that. All in all, Like a Dragon plays out pretty similarly to your standard turn-based JRPG, and doesn't really do anything insanely different. Character turn order is determined by agility, and when it is your turn, you have the option to attack, defend, use skills, use items, or use what the game calls pound mates, which is basically Like a Dragon's version of summons in Final Fantasy. These have all types of effects and are really wacky and hilarious to watch. The absurd humor fits perfectly with the game. They do cost money to call though, so you may only find yourself using them in select scenarios. What you will find yourself using all the time though are your normal attacks and skills. Normal attacks are about as standard as it gets, but skills incorporate timed button presses to provide a little player engagement. It's nothing too complex though, and usually just comes down to press this button at the right time or press this button really fast. To engage in battle in the first place, you must come into contact with hostile enemies throughout the city. The map does show you where they're at, so to an extent, you do have the option to avoid them if you want to. You just may have to inconveniently change your route in order to do so. Because you can trigger a battle in any random part of the city, this also adds an element of randomness to the battle based on the environment. For example, if you select to attack an enemy and there happens to be a sign between you and that enemy, your character will pick up that sign and hit the enemy with it to deal a little extra damage instead of doing the normal attack. Or, if you're fighting in the streets, where there are streets, there are cars, and cars will only stop for so long, so if you stay out there for longer than you should, you or an enemy may get run over for some damage. I mean, our parents did tell us not to play in the streets as a kid, so this outcome seems reasonable. Now, that latter situation doesn't happen often at all, but it is a little funny when it does. But yeah, I can see how some people might not like this randomness aspect of battles, but honestly, I didn't really mind it as it doesn't play a huge factor all in all, and it does add a little excitement at times. The equipment system is pretty similar to most other JRPGs in that you can buy weapons and armors at shops, and later in the game, you even gain the ability to craft your own weapons and armor and upgrade them as well. Health recovery comes from eating at restaurants and using items, which is usually some type of food or drink as well. Also, when eating at restaurants, you gain bonding points with your party members, which allows you to level up the relationship through what the game calls drink links. When you gain a bonding level, you can trigger a drink link, which is when Kasuga pounds back some cold ones with that character and learn some more about their backstory. Not only do these allow for those characters to unlock some abilities in battle, but they do a fantastic job in further fleshing out some already really well written characters. If I haven't made it obvious enough by now, the writing in general is just a huge standout in this game. Character struggles feel real and relatable, and for the most part, conversations play out pretty realistically. As someone who grew up playing tons of JRPGs but is now significantly older compared to when I initially came into contact with the genre, it's so awesome to finally have a JRPG that actually grew up with its fans and deals with mature topics and realistic relationships that I can relate to. As much as I love the genre, I can only handle games about a bunch of 16-year-olds swinging around their swords talking about the power of friendship while having no comprehension of actual real-life issues so much. I mean, I'm about to turn 30 this year, so having a JRPG about well-written characters in their 30s, 40s, and 50s dealing with real-life struggles, it's just really cool. While Like a Dragon has enough modern features to appeal to all kinds of gamers, it truly is a game made for the OG JRPG veteran that grew up playing all the classics. Like a Dragon is just an excellent game through and through that I can't recommend enough. I really have no complaints with the game. I guess if I had to give a couple nitpicks though, the randomness in battles allows for some awkward events to take place at times, and some of the tracks repeat a little often, especially in the sub-stories. The tracks themselves, and the soundtrack in general, are done really well though, so it's definitely not a knock against the music at all. None of this deters from the actual experience either, and is overall just a fantastic game. The gameplay may be a huge departure from the rest of the Yakuza series, but the quality definitely isn't, and it's clear that the studio behind it put just as much heart and soul in it as ever before. It's a more than worthy newest addition to the series, and shows that Like a Dragon may not be a like in action, but it is a like in passion.
Let's go!
Damn it, I said I wouldn't rhyme again, but at least I waited till the end. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to either like it or subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We put out JRPG content every week. Now that you know how we feel about this game, let us know how you feel with a comment below. As always, links to our Patreon and social media are in our bio, so if you wish to follow or support us there, feel free. Other than that, have an awesome day everyone. This is GamingBroductions. Until next time.